Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for tuning in. This is another episode of Devil's Advocate, and I'm your host, the Renegade. And today, joining me, as always, Miss D. How you doing?
I am good on this Saturday, just busy typing away at resumes. So that's pretty much what I've been spending my Saturday doing. But uh, they just want to say happy Saturday out there to all the fans, and hope everybody's having a great weekend.
Oh yeah. And and it's hot, but it's nice down here. So we dealing with it. I guess at least it's not raining because it's been raining like
It's hot.
for.
It's hot and muggy here. Very muggy.
Yeah, yeah. I was outside sweating like a Hebrew slave for a while. All right, and we also got Miss Letitia. How you doing?
Hey, hey, I'm here. It's hot.
Right.
It's muggy here too. It's definitely muggy here as well.
Hmm.
And I guess it's
Yeah,
waking up again.
yeah, a little bit, but that's all right. So glad you could tune in today. This is an interesting topic. I was just talking to the ladies, just a second ago, and we were talking about um how do we think women are running the world? Because I'm around a lot of guys, at work, and I hear them talk about women, and it's kind of like they talk to them as if they're less of a human being or stupid. And I'm kind of like, only if y'all knew what I knew, about that. I just thought that it was really interesting on how they have these different takes about it. So, and I see a lot of women doing a lot of different things. So are women actually running the world? I'm gonna shoot a stat out here. Okay, this is in 2020, 48%, 46.8% of women in the workforce, but it's 2.2 million down than the previous year. But I mean, 46.8% versus, now versus back in, say like the 40s and 50s, where it was just an average of 10%. Um, you could definitely make a case for that, and women being, somewhat the breadwinners. I mean, so what are your thoughts on that, Miss D? What you got?
I wouldn't. I don't think I would necessarily associate that to women being breadwinners. I think a lot of those stats, the 50s versus now, and the percentage of women that are in the workforce, has a lot to do with the cost of living. Oftentimes now,
Mm.
and especially if you consider what salaries are, there aren't that many people that are making a substantial salary or sustainable salary based on the cost of living, based on gas prices, based on prices of food, rent, mortgages. Everything has gone up. And even now in COVID, you got the price of housing now that have gone up in average $36,000 simply because of the price of lumber. So I think a lot of those
Oh,
stats have a lot to do with the cost of living and how a lot of families can't necessarily afford just one singular income. It's unfortunate that we haven't found ways to find more passive income, as opposed to getting outside of that dynamic. But there's nothing wrong with women in the workforce. I just don't know if I associate that to women necessarily running the world. Not to say that women aren't doing great things, not to say that there aren't women out there that aren't handling their business. I just wouldn't
mhm.
necessarily associate that. And I think more of that has to do with what it costs to survive now, oftentimes.
Mm.
Some of it can be tied to the independent mantra that's currently going on with the feminist movement that to me has gotten slightly out of hand. Um, and I think so. The breadwinner comment to me is associated to that. It's associated to the woman that is the only
Okay.
bread bringer in the house. She's the only person that has an income. They're single mothers. There's a big percentage of women that are single mothers now. So you cannot be a single mom running a household where there's no man and not be the breadwinner of the family. So I think a lot of that conversation comes from current dynamics and not necessarily
Right.
because women are in charge.
So okay, and I mean I get that, but my thing is that how it's kind of funny to me. It's kind of funny to me how that really works. Um, I mean, and then they got this new term out too, talking about they are term before
They're what?
pink collar workers.
Now, I have
You
never
know, like
heard of that term.
okay, so what this means is it's work that is considered to be woman's work.
What
That
classifies as woman's work?
that was a whole nother topic also that I wanted to, try to touch on because I like you, I know the show is devil's advocate, but on this one I have to agree. I don't think there's a such thing as women work because when I was years and years
But
ago,
but hold on. That's interesting because I would like to know how new that term is, because with the fight for equality and equal work for equal pay for equal work, and then you have pink collar, that would be interesting to see exactly when that terminology was coined. Because that's a contradiction, but at the same time, it's not that I think that there is work that should be necessarily labeled women's work, but the fight for equal pay, that equal work for equal pay, there's a rare
mhm,
occasion that women are actually doing equal work for the equal pay. So the equal pay that they're asking for does not equate to them actually doing equal work in the work environment. And I hate to say that, but it's true. So for instance, in my line of work, one of the job requirements for every employee, not every male employee, not female, every employee, is you have to have the ability to lift 70 pounds. Every single employee has to have the ability to lift 70 pounds. Now, in my line of work, I rarely see the men ask for assistance when it comes to lifting anything that weighs more than 20 pounds. And even when they do, they only ask the assistance of the male. They never ask the assistance of a female. And if they did, Lord knows there would be hell to pay at work. The fact that a man asked a woman to help him lift something heavy. And in that same environment, I've seen women where they play this role like, oh, get such and such a lift that, get him to lift that, that's heavy. But the requirements are the same for both male and female. So just because you both have the same job title does not mean you're doing equal work. And even if you take away the physical labor, say you're talking about a desk job, so you have two CEOs that do similar work. If the women, there are studies that show women use 40% more time off, sick days, than men do. So in the workplace, even if you're doing equal work because you have a paperwork job, you're a CEO, you run numbers, you could be an analyst, a female analyst and a male analyst, you could both have the same credentials. But if you're off work 40% more than he is, even though you're doing equal work while you're there, you're not doing it the equal amount of time. So at the end of the day, when are women actually doing equal work for men compared to men?
ooh, hold on, wait a minute. Construction sites. I mean, let's say this. I've seen that one myself.
Hold
When they
on.
do really, uh-huh.
But factor in the time off from work too, because women use 40% more sick days than men do. So even if you're doing the same exact job, you have every capability he has. If he's at work 95% of the time and you're only there 70, at the end of the year, say you all lift but you stock buckets of paint. And every day you're lifting these buckets of paint. And on average, you all lift 100 buckets of paint a day. But if he's at work 95% of the time and you're only there 70, at the end of the work week, you
Mhm.
haven't lifted as many pails of paint as he has. So even though you're doing the same exact job, because you're not doing it as much as he is, just like push-ups, you have a woman that can do push-ups, but you can't compare a woman do a female push-ups to do a 25 female push-ups to a man doing 25 male push-ups. So the fight for equality in the workplace to me has always been one-sided. We're not actually doing the same amount of work. I hear their argument though. You got the same title. I get that argument. But when are we actually doing the same amount of work that a man is doing at the end of the day?
I mean, like I said, it's a lot of things that women do in the same amount of work that they all do. They work, driving things that are on construction sites, women drivers. I mean,
But those
it's a
are,
lot.
how many women are they? So you consider those outliers and anomalies. We're talking about in masses.
Mm.
Those are
Well,
anomalies.
okay, so what about the 6% of women who are CEOs? And 8% of that six, I suppose, are leading Fortune 500 companies. I mean, is that something that's, I guess, is that something that's gender based too?
Oftentimes it can be, because I think a lot of the positions are being handed to women in the face of equality. That's no different from symbolism.
Mm.
To me, Kamala Harris, for instance, prime example. Kamala Harris would not be the VP right now had it not been for the Black movement, for the equality movement, for we need more diversity. Had that argument not been taking place at that moment in time, she would not have been the VP. So oftentimes we're given these positions of CEO, vice president, or whatever because of a situation, because we're welcoming diversity. No different from what affirmative action. So you have 100 employees, and affirmative action says 10% of these employees have to be other than white, right? So you have to have a diverse organization. So you're at a pivotal point in your organization where you got to hire some new staff. However, you only say you got one position left, but the quota you have to make, you haven't met that 10% quota. You got one position. You got 4 white guys put in for the job, 1 Black guy puts in for the job. If I have a quota to make because of affirmative action, I have to have X number of employees. Let's say in this situation, that Black guy was not the most qualified. Let's say one of the white men was, but you hire the Black guy because of affirmative action. That's no different. So a lot of times women having being CEOs, I'm not saying they're not capable. I'm not saying that at all. Oftentimes they're handed these positions in the face of diversity.
Mm. So just because, so you me that a lot of some, or maybe a lot of these women are in these positions because they're handed these positions because of diversity.
Yes. And not necessarily, not to say that she's not capable of performing the job, but if there was somebody that was more qualified, but we've got to get this diverse quota, or right now our organization is going through a pivotal moment where we just had a huge issue where there was a sexual harassment case and women are always being mistreated. All of a sudden, okay, we're going to give you this position so we can quiet the workplace down. We've all seen symbolism. Oftentimes communities are given something to quiet them down right now. Look at the summer of protests that we just went through in 2020. You get small victories. Derek Chauvin, prime example. To me, Derek Chauvin was not justice. He was the sacrificial lamb, just so we can settle things right now. Let's calm things down a little bit. And in history has taught you that white people have always been willing to sacrifice one for the many. They always think generationally. They always think for the greater good. So oftentimes you run into these situations where you're walked into these positions to quiet things down. Look at all the Black women that have been named police chief as of late. Have you noticed what the city is, the corruption, the defunding, all of they're handed these positions when that state or that city is in the worst possible position it could actually be in. So oftentimes we're handed these positions because we're not going to let this guy over here fail. We're going to give you this sinking ship, and then when it sinks under you, we can blame it on you. So it's not to say that women can't be CEOs. It's not to say that they're not successful. I've seen it happen in corporate America. Oftentimes people are handed positions. You're handed sinking ships because he doesn't want to take accountability for it. We're not going to let him fall for it, but we'll let you fall for it.
So you're saying that they get appointed positions almost on the basis that they just don't like you in the end.
It doesn't have to be that they
not liking you. It's about the fall guy. This is
right.
It's getting ready to blow up. Let me put somebody I don't mind sacrificing in the
sacrificing.
It doesn't have anything to do with likability. Hey, I like that guy. As a matter of fact, it's usually the motherfucker they like. Because they're agreeable, because they're not going to give no pushback. They're not going to ask a whole lot of questions. It's usually the one they like.
Sacrificial lambs.
Yeah, it's and I could see that where you said they do, because they do that in the military too. sometimes they'll transfer a female of some kind of descent to another unit and give her a promotion over a person that has more promotion points than her, passes their PT test all the time, and has never been in any trouble. I mean, I've seen this quite often. And they'll say, well, we don't want to promote within the unit because that promotes favoritism. I could see why they would say that, but then again, it's like you said, this is what they do sometimes, just in the face of diversity. But I'm wondering, with these kind of numbers, is this really why? Because like I said, over generations, it's a much higher number. I mean, the highest has been since World War II, or World War One, rather.
Because look at the world running. That is apples and oranges. Like over time, we lived a different life back then in World War II. The
Yeah.
world was different. How they looked at women, how the family structure was different. That the whole makeup of family was different. Whereas so
Okay.
now we're fighting a battle of equality. As Z said, feminism is at an all-time high and a little out of control, honestly. So of course you're seeing numbers, but those numbers in a workforce, they're also not accounting for the women who don't want to work for anybody. Because as I look at my circle in particular, there are very few women in my circle that work for anybody. They're all owner operators. They're all entrepreneurs, and it's only a smidgen of us that are working entrepreneurs.
Right. Right. I mean, and that's and that's kind of one of those things too. Like, you didn't see, even 10 years ago, let's just say, you didn't see a whole lot of women wanting to be entrepreneurs and everything else. So what do you think caused this kind of shift?
I think entrepreneurship is at an all-time high in general, not just with women.
Mm,
Everybody is pushing this uh, own your own business thing, which could be a good thing, could be a bad thing. I have my own thoughts on that, but
mm,
entrepreneurship is at an all-time high. I think that for women, because speaking for myself as a woman entrepreneur, there's an amount of flexibility that you need to raise your family. Because if you want to be out here earning money, building wealth, and still raising your children, your 9 to 5 isn't going to do it.
mm. Yeah,
Your
and
nine to
it's
five does not allow you that kind of flexibility.
right. So, I mean, and now it's to a point where, people have to like work two jobs and have like three hustles, really, just to make ends meet, and I get that. And
I really hate that people, especially black people, I really hate the fact that black people like to say hustle versus business. Because if you put yourself in a mindset that it's a hustle, it's always going to be a hustle. It's never going to be a legitimate business. I need us as black people to our change the language. Change the language.
I say that all the time. So, but I mean, it is what it is too. You know,
It is what I understood. But if you say, Letitia, you have 3 side hustles, no, the fuck I don't. I have 3 legitimate cash earning businesses.
okay. So, and I mean, okay, and I get what you're saying, but yeah, I suppose.
There you go. I get what you're saying, but there you go.
I suppose
Change the
that
language.
yes,
Change the language. You suppose what? You look my businesses up.
I
I pay taxes
suppose.
on those businesses.
Okay,
I pay
okay.
taxes on those businesses. My point is, every time you take a step to minimize what you're doing, other people
Mhm.
can minimize what you're doing, and you cause the narrative against yourself. That's
Mm,
my point. When we
okay.
are not using positive language in dealing with ourselves, we give people the ammunition to move against us based on what our negative language was referring to ourselves.
And I feel you on that, because a side hustle does come with a illegal connotation.
Absolutely.
Or illegitimate, I'll say. Not necessarily illegal, but illegitimate.
Right, illegal, illegitimate, right. Oh, that's my side hustle. So you pandering purses, Louis Vuitton purses out your
Now,
trunk. Like it just,
now, don't get me wrong.
Here's the thing.
And
That's
see,
what
this
most
is,
people are doing. So,
but see, this is what I mean by that. Like, say you could have a side hustle of cutting grass on the weekend. That's a legitimate
right.
business. There's nothing wrong with that. It's not illegal. But if you ain't paying taxes on the money that you collect, and if everything is under the table, it's the side hustle mentality. So I get it. If you treat it like a business, because that guy who's cutting grass on the weekend doesn't have an LLC.
Right.
Right.
9 times out of 10. So I get what she's saying. When you call it a side hustle, that's the illegitimate part. That's the, you're not paying tax on. This is all cash, tax-free money, blah, 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 not being reported. You doing what you want to do. And I get it. It's not that what you're doing is illegal. It's not that it's not a legitimate business. But what you're doing, you don't have a legitimate business.
Right.
But that's the thing. Most people are, quote unquote, hustling. Most people, and we do need to quit that. And you're right. I was just trying to call it really for what it was, because
but you know what? I think there are a lot of things that contribute to the numbers in entrepreneurship. One, financial literacy, especially now. A lot of people are learning more about finances and the importance of having finances. And one thing I want everybody to take note of, and as much as I direct my comments to anybody, I especially direct my comments to the Black community, because I'm Black. I'm with my people, and I want my people to do better. There are a lot of things that you can do to try to offset some of the things that we go through, like financial struggles. So instead of going out there buying the Nikes and the TVs and all those tangible items that don't bring any value to your life, get you $1 million life insurance policy. So every time you get tired of seeing the stories where the cop killed another unarmed Black man, guess what? Now that Black man's life that cop took got $1 million price tag on it. And when these insurance companies get tired of paying out these $1 million life insurance policies, maybe they'll stop killing y'all. So we got to start changing the way we think and the way we move and the way we operate. Get you $1 million life insurance policy. It doesn't change that, like the fact that life is gone. It doesn't lessen the pain that you feel, but it might change the narrative later on down the road. We got to start changing the way we think. But not only financial literacy. I think there are a lot of women who have decided to become entrepreneurs because they're tired of dealing with the workplace. There are a lot of women who have experienced a lot of sexual harassment at work. There are women who have experienced disparities at work between men and women. I get it. So I think there are a lot of contributing factors. The women who want to be more at home with their kids. I've always said if I had kids, I would want to spend at least the first year at home with them. Or at least I wouldn't want to send my kids off to daycare until they could say, "Mommy, somebody touch," because I don't trust people like that. So I think there are a lot of factors that have caused the uptick in entrepreneurship, especially in women.
Right. Where, and entrepreneurship is getting working. It seems more and more like indentured servitude these days. I mean, go ahead.
And as much as you're right about that, I don't want anyone to feel like you having a 9-to-5 is something to frown upon, because it's not.
No.
Oftentimes, first of all, there's no CEO without a worker bee. That's first of all. I mean, that's just true. So you have to have the people who just want to go to work. They don't want to be responsible for the business. They don't want to balance a budget. They don't want to do any of that. They want to get paid. They want to do their fair share. They don't mind helping your business grow, but they don't want to divest all their time and energy into their own business. So as much as I agree with that statement, it's not to frown on anybody that has a 9 to 5.
No,
I have a
and
9 to 5 as well. I also had, I've had businesses before. So there's nothing wrong at all with having a 9 to 5. But my thing about the 9 to 5, whatever you go, whatever you do, whether it's entrepreneurship, whether you have a 9 to 5, when you decide to get up in the morning and start work, just give it everything you got. Be the best you can be when you at work. Don't just go to work just simply to collect a paycheck, because you can sit at home and collect a paycheck if you know how to play the stock market. So if that's what you're gonna do, if you're gonna bother being an employee, be a fucking employee and just do right when you at work. Have some decency, have some morality, act like an adult, act like a responsible adult.
And that's the thing. A lot of people aren't cut out for entrepreneurship either.
That's true.
Cause you know, I mean, it's a hassle. It's really a hassle. And I mean, sometimes I mean, going to work or whatnot is safe for a lot of people. And it might as well be. I mean, I get it. So what do you think about the fact that there are more women world leaders? Like what is it? I want to say Australia or New Zealand's got like a woman prime minister. So does India. And I was reading about. I mean, do you think that thing too? Like there are a lot of more women world leaders now than ever.
I'm back to thinking that a lot of that has to do with diversity for symbolism. We're showing the world that we won't just employ men. We're showing world that we stand with feminism. Women can be in charge. Women can be leaders. To me, it's more symbolism than it is accountability. And like I said, it's not to say that those women are not capable.
In the Middle East.
Huh?
What she talking about in the Middle East.
Right. And what's funny about what you said about women leaders, so I did some research too, and it looks like on the entire planet, globally, there are only 5 or 6 matriarchal societies in America. And they're in places like India, where women actually pass down the lineage, their heritage, the children adopt their last names. But there are only 6 globally. And none of those societies contribute to the bigger picture of what those countries are. Like if we had one of those societies in America, they wouldn't contribute to the fabric of America. They're not the ones that are contributing to our wealth, agriculture, things of that nature. Not that they don't work in their cosmic, that whatever group that they've created. It's not that dynamic doesn't work for them, but they're not contributors to the bigger picture of what that continent is or what that country is. So it's interesting as we get more and more into feminism, into this women's empowerment, how you start to see the narrative change. And that's another thing why I call it symbolism. It's propaganda. You can't fight for equality or women's rights or women are equal without seeing visions of it. Just like commercials, you see more and more commercials now with the whole gender battle. So you're seeing more and more commercials where you're seeing when they want to address race, what did you see? You saw the interracial couples on all the advertisements and all the commercials. Now that we're having the gender argument, you're seeing more same-sex couples on TV. So in order for you to have the argument that women are powerful, women can do this, women can be leaders, and to stand behind the feminist movement, you've got to see images of that. So you've got to put women in these positions so that somebody can see it. You can't keep saying we stand behind feminism, but you never put a woman in charge. So to me, a lot of it is in the face of diversity in the form of symbolism.
So kind of like the whole idea of Barack Obama.
Right.
I mean,
and
the whole
when did he become
presidency.
president? Were we not in a depression when he became president? They
So
always
they
give you the shit show.
And he was the fall guy. You
Right.
know, so that way.
But here's the thing. Because you're getting ready to go into it, and his biggest critics are black people. And I'm gonna say this because we're on Devil's Advocate. Black people are the most fickle people I've ever seen in my life. Pick a fucking struggle. Pick one. We don't have anybody but, well, they found one, they put him in the White House, 2 goddamn terms, you motherfuckers still weren't happy. Why? Because you don't understand democracy. I don't give a fuck if there was never a black president. That's not where your power is. Every time we have this conversation, my blood pressure shoots up because I hear people say, what did Barack Obama do for black people? The same every other fucking president did. That's not where your power is.
Right.
The president is not wielding power. That's what the issue was with 45 that we just got out of here. He was exercising power he didn't have.
Yep.
And they allowed it. That's what the issue was. If we're going to have these conversations, we have to have these conversations in an informative, responsible manner. So I say to you people right now, y'all fickle as shit. Y'all will not pick a struggle. You will not be informed about his and the level of ignorance. Your opinion is always formulated on something just ignorant and wrong. It's ignorant and wrong. If you can't open your mouth and form an intelligent statement off of facts, shut the fuck up. That's all I have.
Well, there's that. Yeah.
That's too much. That's too much.
Right.
Nope.
That's too much.
I did not come with my text today, and I don't give a fuck about nobody's feelings. Send me a message.
Hey, this is no filter. This is no filter.
Look, send me a message. We can talk about it directly.
Hey, it's like this is no filter, and that's your opinion. Your opinion.
Those are facts. Those are
Okay.
facts. I don't know how many times I've said that with people. I'm like, so you just skipped American government, huh? You just skipped that whole class.
I pretty much, yeah.
You missed the whole the whole definition.
I honestly
of
pretty much
is lost on you, huh? Oh, okay.
Yeah, well, pretty much. That's how that goes. I skipped that whole damn class and still graduated. Ain't that something?
Look, wasn't we just talking about the school system in America?
Right.
Did we and I wound up learning.
I wound up learning about it, in the military and everything else.
And you know what? Here's the thing, Ray. I think if we're not teaching our children politics and money, we've off the cuff failed them.
But you know what?
That's an interesting required.
Letitia, when I tell you that is the most interesting thing you said tonight, and the fact that it came from a woman is interesting to me, because think about this. In a family where there's a father and a mother, who typically teaches finance and politics? If they're talked about, who are they talked about from? Mom or dad, typically. So if we take dad out of the house with all this whole women's empowerment, so like I said, it's not that women can't be CEOs. It's not that women can't be successful. It's not that there are not anomalies out there. There are some very strong women out there, but those are anomalies. Those are those once in a millions. By the masses in numbers, women cannot successfully lead this country. I don't care what nobody says. Yes, there are a few that can. Every one of y'all, please don't get it twisted.
I agree.
Y'all are not capable.
And then think about it, like, because you touched your finances, right? So let's put this in proper perspective. 40 to 50 years ago, when a man left the home, women were financially screwed. They didn't know how to pay bills. The running of the household financially was lost on them. And that's just
so were politics. So were politics.
Because women were locked out of politics for a while.
Yes, but even with women being locked out, how many were really interested? Because how many women do you know that can play chess? And the reason I'm using the chess reference is because all of us know that chess is pure strategy.
Pure.
Yeah.
So when you talk about running companies, when you talk about running a country, shit, for me, running a household, because I had 5 children running in here, that's strategy.
Right.
How
Right.
many women do
Yeah.
you know that can move strategically and logically, and them allow strategy and logic to move them versus their emotion? Yes, there are men that are emotional, but when we're talking about strategy, it's all
Well, let's
about how
just
the
talk about.
mind works.
Well, hold on. Let's talk about what women have produced. So, Rennie, so you said it's 40% of households right now ran by single mothers, right?
Hold on. 48%.
Okay, 48% of
Okay.
households in America right now ran by single mothers. So,
That's right.
according to, if you look at DHHS and DOJ and Census Bureau and all that, of the households that are ran by single women, a good majority of them are collecting some form of child support, alimony, or state assistance, right? According to their stats, 70% of those women, those single households ran by women, live below the poverty line. So let's talk about the children you all produce. According to those stats, those households are the ones that are creating the next generation of criminals. So fatherlessness is the leading cause of criminality when it comes to people being having criminal records, when it comes to high school dropouts, when it comes to teen pregnancy, when it comes to rape, when it comes to all these social and mental issues. They're mostly stem from fatherlessness. So we don't even have to worry about the women who want to be strategic. We could talk about what y'all are producing right now. No different from the conversation I had with the woman about there was a conversation about, men not being chivalrous anymore. Why are men not like this? Who's raising these men? Well, if you look back in history, y'all
Women.
have been raising these men for the last couple of decades. You're who's raising them. So when the new generation is complaining that there are no good men to find, they've been raised by women. So the 48% of households right now that are being ran by single women, let's talk about what you have produced so far in masses. Women cannot lead this country. I'm not saying that there aren't anomalies out there. I'm not saying that there aren't women that are not more than capable, but by the masses, it's not happening. It's not happening. We've seen what y'all produce.
And there's going to be a lot of angry women out here. And here's the thing: if you're angry about what myself or D is saying, it's because you're leading with emotion and not leading off of what is fact. The facts are, and D is not lying. You've produced criminals. You have produced emotionally jacked up men.
Right.
That's the area in which I dabble in most. And let's talk about our community. Let's keep this a buck. Most men in our community have women issues because of their mother.
Hey, what's going
And that's the bottom. And that's the bottom line. Because that relationship, that first relationship you have with a woman is your mother. And if you have a dicey relationship with your mom, which a lot of men do because they are a product of single mothers, overworked, frustrated, and by the time they get to their kid, verbal abuse goes so much further than what physical abuse does, right?
Right.
So most of these men have been verbally slaughtered by their mothers. Why would they respect women?
And then slaughtered in the system when they become adults. So hence there goes the criminal.
It's
Exactly.
kind of a double-edged sword then, is
Yeah.
what you're saying? Okay.
Yeah. And just think about this. Slavery is the story it is today because of what? Because men were stripped from the households as the head of household, right?
Right.
That's the only way slavery went down. So when you get to this feminist movement where we no longer need men, think about that. Not just about the Black community, but any society. Let's think about war. When you go to war, the spoils of war the victor get the spoils of war, right?
That's right.
When I'm the victor, if me and you are at war, I'm the victor. What do I take? I take your women and I take your children, and they now belong to me. So when you take the man away, the women become vulnerable in the masses.
Okay, so you got a point about that. And there's something that I know about the Willie Lynch theories, and he did the same thing during slavery, where he took the men away from the slave and his family, and he separated them. And when he did that, that left the woman to be able to negotiate
Right.
with the slave master at her will. And when that happens, they of course, come to an agreement about a whole lot of things. Um, and then later on, when her sons are grown up, she will offer all the kids up to the slave owner to do as he pretty much pleases.
Right.
So yeah, it is a slavery method, and it is a slave mentality. I mean, so I can agree with you on that. But do you
And,
think?
and then
Go ahead.
and then look at the women that have been in charge. For instance, look at Lance Bottoms, Georgia.
Okay.
Yeah. So okay. So you know what happened the summer protest. You know the story about Georgia when the little girl got shot. She immediately jumped to the black community.
Yes.
Blah blah. All
That's
that
the first thing
situation.
I thought about. That's the
Right.
first thing I thought about. Yep. Go ahead.
But what was crazy about her is in the beginning, she was this whole gung ho. I've got to do something for the black community. I want to help the black community. I stepped up because no one else would. I stepped up because no one else would. That was her strong. I mean, she stood behind that. She wanted to be the difference. But then when things got hot and heavy, before you was in the news and blah blah blah. So when things got hot and heavy, when now there's a real problem and your city is really burning, and now you got to answer to this when you have to choose between your role as a black woman in black America and how do I preserve my blackness, how do I help my community, how do I save my community, and the role that the white man gave you, you get into a crossroad. And I thought it was funny that when the city was going through its worst time in decades, with the summer of protest, all this nonsense that was going on, the shooting, I think it was Ahmaud Arbery that was out there in Georgia, or whatever the guy's name out there the guy at the Wendy's too. When all of that was going down, you decide to step down, but there was no one there to take your place. So what happened to the woman who stepped up because no one else would? So when it got the heaviest, when you had to make a choice to support the black community or pick that political side, what did you choose to do? You chose to step down.
You know what? I'm gonna tell you this much. Keisha Lance Bottoms lost my respect the minute that happened. That shooting happened with that 8-year-old little girl in front of for those of us that don't know what she's talking about. This happened last year in front of a Black Lives Matter rally. It was probably there's sometime around the night, I do believe. And there was about 1,500 people there at this rally. Well, there was a drive-by shooting, and an 8-year-old little girl was shot and killed, a little black girl. And the first thing Keisha Lance Bottoms did was blame it on the black community. But why would you blame it on the black community when no one's even identified the shooter?
There was no suspect. They didn't even know who they were looking for.
Right. So, and she just said, "We're out here killing each other, y'all." I'm like, come on.
Right.
Really? So I'm like, so you're willing to throw your people underneath the bus to prove a point.
And that's why I say for me,
right. What point was it she trying to prove? I mean, that's the thing.
And see, that's why I say for me, a lot of these women being in power, like I said, it's not to say that women can't. A lot of it is political. A lot of it is in the face of diversity. A lot of it is just, okay, I'm not going to go down and sink a ship. I'm going to hand this sinking ship over to the Lance Bottoms of the world, and I'm going to let you have at it. Happens all the time. So I think a lot of it is symbolism and not necessarily this woman worked her ass off to get here. And it's not that she didn't work her ass off, but those aren't the credentials that got you that title. Not to say that it can't happen, but I think a lot of it is people being placed in those positions.
Okay, so playing devil's advocate with you in corporate America, and you ought to know this, I'm pretty sure, man. Maybe you see it from a different perspective, but I hear a lot of black women talk. In corporate America, the rules for a black woman are different. It's a whole different set of rules. So with that being said, you know,
Unspoken rules.
right, the unspoken rules. Okay, so with that being said, what I mean, let's make the case saying that they did work for it. I'll just go there and say that. Like what you know, so basically almost every black woman in America, you know, has this problem. So I mean, are they included in this whole diversity conversation when it comes to appointing leadership?
Sometimes they are. Like I said, it's not to say that you didn't deserve to be there, but
Mm.
oftentimes you're there because you can have all the credentials in the world. But if I'm a CEO, say I'm a white guy, I'm a CEO, and I notice that this company is going down, all of a sudden you hear in the news, CEO sold all their stocks, and all of a sudden there's a new black female CEO that's been appointed to the job. You were just handed a sinking ship. It's not to say that you didn't have the credentials or what it took to be a CEO. That's not to say that. It's to say that under those circumstances, you were awarded that position for a reason, to be the fall guy. Because at the time that it was handed to you, we were already headed downhill. We were already broke. And oftentimes that's what happens. So it's not to say that even the people that are there, even if you were there because of affirmative action, or even if you're there because it's a political move or it's symbolism, it's not to say that those women do not have credentials. It's not to say that Kamala Harris can't write law. It's not to say that about her. It's not to say that she hasn't done work. But Kamala Harris would not be the VP if we weren't having the race argument that we were having in 2020. That's all I'm saying. She would not have been who Biden selected under no circumstances.
I honestly don't think she would have either, because I thought that it was going to be Stacey Abrams. I thought that would have been the best pick, you know, when we talk about, you know, since he wanted that. And I mean, you do drop a point, because Biden said, hey, you know, I want diversity and I want a woman.
Right.
I mean, he
But
did
with
that.
Kamala, even with diversity, with Kamala, not only do you get diversity, but you also get more slighted towards the acceptable version of blacks, the light skins, the mulattoes, the vision of blacks they want to see in those positions. Not to say that that's what happened, but oftentimes natural selection plays a role. And so with Kamala, you get black,
that was another
but you
tool, Willie
also
Lynch.
get that Kamala's married to a white man. So you also get that.
Mm-hmm. Now, natural selection was also another tool that Willie Lynch used in slavery. So, I mean, we can correlate this whole thing with slavery if you guys really want to know, like, how to compare it and what to compare it to.
It just proves that business model works.
Yeah, well, it's been working for centuries.
Right.
And let's see. So Willie Lynch, for those of y'all who don't know who Willie Lynch is William Lynch, and he was a slave owner from somewhere in the West Indies. I'd say more like the Bahamas or something like that. Who gave a conference? I'm sorry, who gave a conference in the Virginia colonies. It was December 25th, 1712. About 86 years before, you know, this country was formed. And he gave a speech and pointers on how to control a species of people for hundreds of years. And when the effects are almost worn off, you know, all you do is repeat the process. So for those of y'all don't know who Willie Lynch is, this is who he is. So I mean, I see what you're saying though. And I'm just wondering, because these stats are almost double than what they were quite some time ago.
But I still think that's about the cost of living now. Most households cannot afford. So if you think about it, if you make $15 an hour, that comes to about $30,000 a year. Even $15 an hour isn't a lot if you consider what life costs today, and especially if you bring kids into the dynamic. not that kids should change your life dramatically, but kids have needs, and kids have ever growing needs. So it's always once you grow into your adult body, you don't have to buy clothes every 2 months because you're not growing out of them like that. You don't have to constantly buy shoes because you're growing out of them. So you get to level set some of the spending once you become older. But when you have kids, it's an ever growing cost. It's an evolving cost all the time. So when you factor in the cost of living, think about colas. When's the last time someone actually got a cola? But the cost of living continues to rise. The salaries haven't. How long has the federal minimum wage been $7.25 an hour?
Mm-hmm.
But the cost of living has gone up substantially since then. Even in COVID, cost of living has gone up since 2020 because of COVID, because supply chain has been impacted, because of stuff like the gas, the pipeline hack. Then you had the meat department hack. So chicken prices are going up, beef and pork, all those costs are going up, but nobody's gotten a salary increase. So households now, you have to have two forms of income oftentimes now in a household. So I think a lot of that is about the cost of living, not necessarily about, I don't think most of those women choose to be in the workforce. I think a lot of those women would like to be at home with their children. I think a lot of them at work because it's a necessity more than it is a desire.
So so you're saying it's, because these numbers, this isn't really the natural order of things.
Right.
That can contribute. Yeah. And we're definitely, living in unnatural times. So yeah, I can agree with that.
What's funny is I would like to see those numbers next year, because I think they're going to drop dramatically with women in the workforce, because with the whole kids working from home, when they started that virtual learning thing, a lot of mothers left the workforce because they got 5 and 7 and 8-year-olds that are at home constantly because of work, virtual schooling. So, and a lot of those women possibly have gotten back in touch with being an at-home mom, loving the fact of being there with their kids. A lot of them may not want to go back into the workforce. So I'll be interested to see what those numbers are for 2021 as well.
Yeah, you mean going into 2022?
Yeah.
Okay. And that would be interesting. And I want to see how these women world leaders are still holding up in their respective positions, later on. And so just to give a recap, I gave, pretty much stats. All right. So for those of y'all who are just tuning in or just looking out, I'll give some of these stats. 46.8% of women are in the workforce in 2020, 2.2 million fewer than in 2019. 48% of women are heads of households. Then we have 6% of women who work are CEOs, 8% lead Fortune 500 companies, and we have more women leaders. But here's the deal with that. What I'd like to know, Miss D, as soon as she comes on, there we go. What I would like to know, though, there was a term we were discussing, actually. And it's the first time I heard this, and there's even more categories of it, but, none that really fit this show. They've got a spectrum of collar workers, and this is called a pink collar work. Work that is considered to be women's work. And now, here's the thing. It's like Letitia said just a little bit ago. Semantics is a bitch. Okay. And what women's work, didn't we do this back in the 50s, 60s, 40s, where we said, hey, a woman works here. If that's the case, then nursing would be women's work. But there are a lot of male nurses.
And you know what? I get the stigmas, but I don't. I get the classifications because there may be more female nurses than male nurses, because nurses come with a nurturing, their inhibitions are to be nurturing, and more women are nurturing than men. Not to say that men can't be, but that's more of a female trait than it is a man trait. I hate the term women's work and men's work, but I don't even know how I feel about that. I would like to know what corporate America considers women's work, or how do you classify women's work in today in 2021 where everybody is fighting for equality?
I don't know. I think it's that. I think it's the old Jim Crow mentality, personally.
Because even if you think back in the day, what they considered women's work, like clerical work or assistants, clerical work is nothing more than paper pushing, and anyone can paper push. Who's I don't know if they classified that as women's work because it didn't involve manual labor, or if I don't know how that got classified as women's work. Anybody can shuffle paperwork.
Sure can. Sure can. I mean, it's not hard. I mean,
Right.
it's just
Anybody can hand you a memo. Anybody can file your emails. Anybody can set up a meeting. Anybody can do that assistant work. And I don't know if they considered the females work. Maybe that was sexist. Maybe they considered females work because as a man, I would rather my secretary be a woman than a guy. I don't know how that got classified, but I'd be interested to see what all those titles or job descriptions would be, and to see how they came up with that list. How did it get classified as women's work?
Just Google it. I'm serious. I looked at this and I said, wait a minute. Okay, so we got pink collar workers. It's like gray collar workers. I mean, it's a whole spectrum of things.
What's gray?
Look, I'm just saying, look it up. The pink collar worker is what got me. Because I thought that fit for the topic of conversation. Yeah, so I just kind of wondered, like, okay, so a pink collar worker, really? And I thought that the term was sexist. No, go ahead. Were you about to say something?
No, Wikipedia says pink collar worker is someone working in the care-oriented career field or in fields historically considered to be women's work.
Uh-huh. Yeah, so that's what I mean. I mean, will we be using that term? I think that whole term sets us back about 80 years. I'm just saying, because I'm like, wow, that's pretty amazing. And as politically correct as people want to be now, here we have this. You know
what? The world is so unpolitically correct. It's ridiculous. Or politically incorrect, however you want to say that. But we hide behind political correctness. But in all honesty, most of us really aren't at all.
You know what? You know what? I posted a meme yesterday. It was in our group chat for No Filter. Let's see. I am going to find it, and it basically said political correctness is oppression. Oppression in the disguise of manners.
Manners. Yep. That's all it is.
George Carlin's, yeah, political correctness is fascism pretending to be manners. Same thing.
Yep.
And it's a George Carlin quote. And I thought he was really brilliant. So do you think that all in all, are these numbers presented to try to change the narrative? Do you think this is another agenda that they're pushing out? Because again, a man, let's just say in the nuclear family, all right, and I'm going to give this scenario. In a nuclear family, traditionally speaking, a man works, and if a woman works, now if you take that job from him, it's a million things that can happen that he'd lose his family, and him and his family would be separated. I mean, there are things that can happen more often than not behind that. So do you think that would be another form of, well, let's just say what, the Willie Lynch theory?
I guess it could be. To me, I think the numbers are just being misrepresented to change the narrative. I think the numbers are what they are, but I don't think the numbers are that because women are taking over the world. I think the numbers are that because the cost of living is so high. Not to say that all those women don't want to be in the working force. There are a lot of women who love being independent. There are a lot of women out there who are doctors, who are lawyers, who really are doing big things and would want it no other way. There are a lot of women who work for Fortune 500 companies who wouldn't want it any other way. I even remember when I was a little girl, one of the things I loved, the first time I saw a movie with a woman in a pencil skirt and her heels and a briefcase, I was like, that's going to be me one day. I'm going to have a briefcase and a pencil skirt and walk down the hall, and you're going to hear my heels clacking. So a lot of those women actually love that. But I think more of those numbers are driven by the cost of living. So I think it's not that the data isn't the data. I think it's misrepresented for what it stands for.
Understood. All right. So with that being said, we have came to the end of our show, and I think that this show is very informative. Because and there again, I guess we'll see what happens and how these numbers will turn out. But I think you are right. So, any last words, Miss D?
I guess for me, I don't want to say this is to the feminists out there, but for the ones who stand behind feminism, I would love to have a conversation with you to see what your idea of feminism looks like. What is the end result? What's the goal here? I would love to have a debate with somebody who really does stand for feminism, who thinks women need to be in control. We don't need men. I would love. So I'm extending an invite. I would love to have a conversation with one of you. Please contact me, because for me, huh?
You want to have that on the show?
If we find one, I would love to have them on the show, because I always welcome debate, always. And there are some things that I can learn from somebody because I'm on the opposite end of the spectrum. So there may be some angles that I'm not looking at. There may be some points that I'm not considering. So I'm always for a healthy debate. I'm always looking for someone to, maybe you can convince me to look at something differently. But for me, looking throughout history and everything that I've experienced, I don't understand how we got to a point where we can remove the man from the dynamic when that's what happened in slavery. Everything that goes wrong, all the leading causes of criminality, it's all tied to the man, to the head of the household, to what that guy brings to the table, what he is in society and what he means to us, what he means in the village. So I would love to hear what the end goal is for feminism.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, and there, and that's a lot you can say about that. We could go on and on about that. I'll tell you what, we won't do that, but that will be another time. Again, this is your boy, the Renegade, and we thank you for tuning in. This has been Devil's Advocate for Letitia, Miss D, and myself. You guys have a good night. Stay safe. Tune in next week, same time ish, something like that. We'll get back to you on that. We're still working on that. So, we enjoyed having you, and you guys have a good one. Until next time, take it easy.
Y'all have a good weekend.